All right, we're live. Testing, testing. Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn one of the clues is frolicking yokels.
Three, two, one. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Pepper. I am here cross country with Paul Packler, who appears. You have a root beer with you this evening? Or is that a root beer?
I have a sarsaparilla.
Is that that looks like that might actually be an IPA?
It is. I'm nothing if not a caricature of a certain type of New Yorker.
A hipster.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Well, there you are.
Now, guys, welcome back. This is part 2. But so there's a lot of ground to cover tonight. First of all, Corey, can we talk about how Logan's shoot with Leah Thompson from Back to the Future went?
It went really well. Leah Thompson was a very, very pleasant to Logan anyway, and she's adorable, and she's all of 5'2", and it went really well. He only did one scene in the show, but it was a relatively sort of a big scene with a lot of extras and stuff. So it took a while for them to get it done, but she was very pleasant.
That's great. Now, when there are a lot of extras around, does Logan like push them around, or does he like?
No. Do you? Well, you tell me, Logan.
Get in anybody's face?
Oh no, I just ignore them.
Do you ignore them?
Okay.
Well, it's not. Well, I mean, it's not like I truly engage in conversation and want to learn deeper meanings about them. But
right.
I'm not mean.
Hey, look at the thing.
Not mean. Well, that's the best you can hope for if you're an extra, that the principals aren't mean to you.
Exactly. Yes. I think that the most horror stories that I've ever heard about are from the Screech biography from his time on Saved by the Bell. He wrote about a bunch of extras and stuff.
I just remember one night I was working on a TV show, and it was a night shoot, and it was in December, and it was cold, and I was driven from my trailer up to the location, which was up in the hills, and I saw a whole bunch of people standing in front of a garbage can that was lit. And we're in a very suburban area of the San Fernando Valley. And I thought, what the hell is going on? And the PA who drove me to the set said, oh, those are the extras. It's freezing outside and we don't have any place inside.
Jesus Christ.
As they did that, they escorted me from the vehicle into the living room of a home that had a burning fireplace and little space heaters all around for all of the principals to warm up.
Wow, it was the best of shoots. It was the worst of shoots.
That's exactly what it was like. I thought, oh my God.
Oh, I will say, Leah, before shooting, when I was in the hair and makeup trailer getting my hair done, she walked in and introduced herself right away, saying, hi, I'm Leah. I'm the director. Hi, I'm Logan. Nice to meet you. It was really cool.
That's nice when people do that. When they introduce themselves, they make the effort to go around and say hello.
Absolutely, and especially being the director. I mean, I would imagine she's very busy getting everything done, so the fact that she goes around and introduces, that's amazing.
Yeah, just as if you're walking by hair and makeup, stop by and see if there's somebody who just had a call time that you want to say hello to.
Right.
Second part of this one, huh? Of this very exciting episode.
Yeah, this is season 6, episode 21, Read It and Weep, part 2.
Absolutely. And we did part 1 last week, right? I try and forget these things. It's like childbirth, where I try and forget as soon as it happens so that I can get back in and do it again next week. This one I was sort of unforgettable, though, because Gary David Goldberg has a series of soapboxes that he gets on during these 2 episodes.
Truly, like he does one, abandons it in mid-scene, gets onto another one, drunkenly stumbles into the third one in the next scene.
Ultimately it gets to be very ponderous, the second half of this episode, when we have the vignettes of testifying people. I'm a testifying.
Last week I said that I was very much looking forward to that. I felt like the cliffhanger was earned last week. And I was excited to see how things turn out. Worse than expected is, if you don't want to listen any further, worse than expected.
But then I also dangled the carrot in front of you of a special guest star this week, and I actually enjoyed her very much.
She's a goddamn star.
Yeah, you know what? I said the same thing. I said she walked in like she had a spinoff that was already written for her with this as the lead character.
Absolutely.
And
it was a terrible character, and she was brilliant in it.
absolutely. It was like, wow, she took the bull by the horns. She came in and she took over the show.
All right, so first off, we've got a lot of ground to cover, as I said before. So the special guest star was
Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the most decorated television actress in history.
Is that true?
Oh, by a long shot, yeah.
I believe it. I mean, from
She's also
Seinfeld.
the only actress to win an Emmy Award for 3 different comedies.
Seinfeld, Veep, and what was the other? The New Adventures of Old Christine?
Yep, won the Emmy for that too.
Wow. Was that show good?
I didn't really watch it because it was sort of CBS, and I don't usually watch those CBS shows, but I can't imagine it being terrible with her in it.
Right.
She's just so good with banter and comedy, and her timing is so good, and she's always so interesting.
She's maybe one of the best comedic actors of all time, bar none.
Oddly enough, she is. And for those who may not remember, she did end up doing a Gary David Goldberg pilot that failed.
Oh yeah, she was the star of The Art of Being Nick.
Yes, so we know that this is a relationship that Gary David Goldberg clearly liked Julia Louis-Dreyfus and was going to use her.
Yeah, she was in a bunch of pilots and stuff. Like I think in like the oral histories or whatever of Seinfeld, they talk about that, or she said that she was like bouncing around from shoot to shoot to shoot of trying to find something that would pick up, and then Seinfeld was the one that just did.
We start this one with Andy reading a book, and asking Jen, what does the word band mean? And he asked that question a few times during this scene, never really getting an answer that a 5 or 6-year-old would understand. But Alex comes in holding big books, and as we know, the history of the show is big books. If you're going to bring books on to that set, they better be big.
This is like the 3rd or 4th time that they've indulged in this trope.
I don't get it. It's not funny. It doesn't work. It didn't work the first 3 times. I don't get it. But he has really, really big works, but big books. But I noticed something in this scene, and it happens again later. And we haven't mentioned it in a while, and we haven't mentioned it because Andy has gotten so much better. Brian Bonsall has gotten so much better with his lines, and they can actually write for him. But they maybe write a little bit for him, but more than anything, they want to make Andy exit.
Yeah, they just want to get him out of there as quickly as they can.
Exactly. And so he's really become proficient at throwing a line, turning, wheeling, and going at that swinging door in the kitchen.
It's almost like an old vaudeville type shtick.
It is. It's so repetitious, and they just don't let him sit in those scenes very often. And it's like, what is a 6-year-old going to do? I have something more interesting to do than watch adults. What 6-year-old would think that?
Yeah, like he would want to stick around. They're his family.
Really? I'm going to give up sticking around my family. I'm going to go sit in a room by myself.
Ultimately, that is what would be the case. Like, because like everyone else comes on screen, and he's the only one not on screen. So like, all of these times you don't see, Andy is sitting there twiddling his thumbs on the couch.
Because the rest of the family's in the kitchen. He's waiting for somebody to play Connect 4 with him in his room.
He's like the guy in the Blair Witch Project, just staring at the corner of a wall.
Where is everybody? Alex is obviously very proud of Jennifer, that she's taking a stand about all this. So she's very, very he's proud of her. And how does one show pride in one sibling but a delicious glass of early Act 1 orange juice?
It was great. I was glad it was there. I'm glad that Alex B. Keaton's taking a little bit of stock in his bodily health, that he's not drinking so much soda.
Exactly. Don't go to that refrigerator and pop the top on a pop. It's pop. It's Ohio, right?
Yeah, that was good. You're very true to form, or true to the world. Yeah, in Pittsburgh, it's pop.
Speaking of Pittsburgh, I watched a special about food in Pittsburgh today.
Oh boy!
So I know you and food Yeah, yeah, not exactly something, if it's not grilled cheese or like a hamburger or a slice of pizza, it's sort of out of your comfort zone. You haven't gotten much better than that, have you?
No, it's true. The Pittsburgh influence on me. I seem so worldly, but when it comes to food, I'm just a working class guy at heart, and so I
And,
don't need fancy
and
sushi where you cut up a blowfish and it might be poisonous, like you crazy New Yorkers.
now, you Yinzers do have a few very particular.
Oh, Corey, I'm allowed to say Yinzer, but it's offensive when you say it.
Oh, it's like, can I say the Y word?
Well, you already did.
I didn't realize it was offensive for someone who's not from Pittsburgh to call someone a Yinzer.
Oh yeah, you're a jagoff.
Okay, well, that's well earned on my part. Ask you if you could pronounce the Polish sausage the way that Pittsburghers pronounce the Polish sausage.
Kabasi.
Thank you. That's how I wanted you to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I did not know that is how Pittsburghers pronounce that Polish sausage, not kielbasa like the rest of the world does.
I don't know where it came from. I remember hearing it as a kid all the time, kabasi, kabasi, kabasi. And then I saw it in print and had no idea what it was.
And then I learned on the show also a new thing that I'd never heard of before, which is apparently very specific to the Italian community in Pittsburgh, and that is the dish greens and beans.
That I'm not aware of.
Yeah, it's sort of any kind of. Now the beans are always like Italian cannellini beans, but the greens could be anything from spinach to kale in a more modern place, or mustard greens or collard greens in a different place. But greens and beans they say it's on the menu of every Italian restaurant in Pittsburgh, nowhere else.
In that I've never come across. The big thing that my grandmother would make was a gnocchi.
Ah, really?
That was the big thing that she would always make. But beyond that, I didn't grow up like eating a lot of like Italian things.
From potatoes?
What's that?
Did she make potato gnocchi or from flour?
Potato.
Potato. Yeah. Anyway, I'm done with my Pittsburgh segue. I just thought I saw these things and I was like, wow, I never knew that.
That was great. I just felt very nostalgic. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't even go to Primanti Brothers. And
yeah, you didn't. They didn't cover that in the episode.
They did. They did. But I knew Primanti Brothers for years, and I'm always fascinated. I'm more fascinated with the history of the Primanti Brothers and why the sandwiches are so large. And it was for the truckers that came through Pittsburgh.
Exactly. They're lazy, and
they make a couple of sandwiches, and if you're going to be on the road for 12 hours, there you go. That's all the food you need.
Exactly. And they're really messy. So when you're all like hopped up on amphetamines and your hands are shaking, all the coleslaw and French fries fall into your lap.
Teamsters, we love you. Just want to let you know that.
Hey,
very much in favor.
No, you know what? I love unions. I'm just saying that, like, because of these big companies, these guys have to drive 50 hours, 60 hours a week.
Yes, I agree that is wrong. So Jennifer poses the question to orange juice drinking Alex P. Keaton: what if Hewitt the Hun suspends me? And that's what's really bugging her. And at that moment, Mallory comes in looking awfully cute, wearing glasses, sort of like little lawyerish, and she's reading Huck Finn aloud.
Yes, and this was the first time, and throughout this second part, remember last week we were talking about Damon, our listener Damon, saying that she was being very dumb, like exceptionally dumb. And I think in this part was the one that he was making reference to.
Absolutely, because are we really going to pretend that 19-year-old Mallory, who's a college student, doesn't know how to read?
Yeah, this becomes like a very special episode where she and Nick have forgotten or never learned how to read.
And they sort of play that for laughs, and it really wears its welcome out almost immediately.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that she looks cute. In fact, she announces right here, I'm going to teach Nick how to read. Like Nick doesn't know how to read.
Weird. And when we're talking about outfits, Jennifer is wearing an all denim sort of like Tiffany jumpsuit that's badass. I love it.
Yeah. And at this point, Elise and Steven come in, and they have a whole big scene with them standing between the OJ, with just the OJ like sort of framed in the picture. It was quite beautiful. It was way more interesting than the scene itself.
I agree.
We cut to the office at school, and in the office we have our supposed villains: Hewitt the Hun, the principal. We have Carter, Mr. Carter, who's from the Board of Education, and we have the old David Hyde Pierce, the poor man's David Hyde Pierce lookalike contest winner, Mr. Flority.
Yes. He got first place.
He did. He's one of those guys. He's like got one of those lookalike agents, and now he does like he does like Frasier readings.
Oh, that's good.
He's let's see. Who's trying to be very? Oh, it's very intimidating. This whole thing is very intimidating. Everybody's very intimidated by. The mom and dad are there, right?
Yeah. So Steven, we find out again, is not as hippie-y as he puts on to be. He was a fucking narc in high school.
Yeah.
He was a school monitor or a hallway monitor.
And then so they have this thing where like the school board member is going to intimidate him, and Steven is incredibly intimidated immediately by the principal and the school board member. And
so this episode very quickly becomes just a treatise on freedom of speech and what schools are allowed to teach. And they just stop telling jokes at this moment. It's just for the rest of the episode, it's a debate club.
And I'd like you to know that at this moment that you should say this, the note that I wrote down says blah, 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 blah. Because that's what happens from this moment forward.
Yes.
It's blah, 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 blah. It's so uninteresting. And they get into the minutia of court cases, and who gives a fuck?
I don't know what I was expecting this second episode in the two-parter to be, but it's just nothing. It's a whole lot of nothing. And
I found it more interesting when Andy was reading to Nick than this whole school board thing with Huck Finn.
There was that had he's like, Nick, you're doing really well, and that made me actually laugh. And then there was a Michael J. Fox line that made me actually laugh, and that never happens.
It's amazing here. So the school board member starts. Mr. Carter starts going blah 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 blah, talking about what their job is, and he was elected, or his job is to protect the kids, and they do in a very Gary David Goldbergish way. They present both sides of the story in a fair kind of way that they think is fair.
In a fair way, but neither one is well exposed or well said.
Right. And it's certainly not in an entertaining fashion.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you had one guy who had already had one beer and now he's drinking his second, and then another guy had like smoked some pot, and then the two of them are going to discuss an episode of a show from 30 years ago. It has the same sort of level of discourse.
Yeah, it does.
It's that sort of high-mindedness that you find.
Holy cow. Wow. I'm just having a terrible soul-searching moment there. And then to top this whole scene off, Steven tries once again to intimidate the school board member and Hewitt the Hun, and fails miserably again.
Yeah, is there a point in this scene where Elise says, well, if it's good enough to be in the public library, it should be something available to the students?
Yeah, that's when I wrote down that they were trying to show both sides of it. I thought it was being fair, that Elise said probably the smartest thing in the whole scene.
I think, and that's it. I think that's the smartest argument to be made, is that, like,
yeah,
because it's available in a public space, school is a public space.
It's just, therefore, you should be consistent with what the public does. And also, the library is run by the city. The school is a city thing too. It's just sort of silly.
Yeah.
we cut here to the living room back at the house, and back to the B plot of Mallory reading to Nick. And the little shtick that they have is that Mallory and Nick are passing the book back and forth to each other, reading the Huck Finn one sentence at a time. And Nick's really excited when he gets the short sentences.
Man, oh man! Like, I just, it's exhausting how dumb they are in this episode.
Yeah,
I can't imagine, like, you know, sometimes Nikki will find an article that she's like, oh, here, I'll read you this thing. And I sit there and enjoy listening to her read the thing. But, like, that a couple would have so much fun together reading and passing sentences back and forth. I don't want to hang out with that couple.
Like it would make sense. Like the book, like you'd have any understanding of the book at all.
No.
And of course, they offer Alex if he wants to join in. Would you like to take a sentence or two, Alex? Yeah, you want to do that? And he said, "No, I like to read my sentences in groups."
First time I've agreed with Alex P. Keaton in years.
I know. I thought to myself, yeah, so do I. I like to read it in sort of groups, like paragraphs at a time. That's pretty good. So he makes fun of them for being stupid. And then the phone rings, and it's Jennifer, and it's a guy from a newspaper. And apparently all week long it's been happening that there have been people calling for interviews all week long to talk to Jennifer about this huge, huge deal that she appears to be the spokesperson for. And then the phone rings again, and she's very rude to the person. And it's Grandma.
What? Which grandmother do you think it is? Grandma Keaton or Grandma Connolly? Or Donnelly?
Donnelly. Yeah, Donnelly. That's Elise's mother. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I in the preceding scene when they go to the principal's office, I thought that the lawyer was going to be there. Maybe they were just trying to keep things low key at the time, and then it sort of blows out of proportion. The scene that we're in right now, where like all the newspapers are calling, like it's gotten out. But I think you would want the lawyer at a certain point earlier than they bring a lawyer in.
Oddly enough, I agree with you. I think you would want the lawyer at the first meeting. If you're going to go to something, you should have somebody representing you.
Yeah, and especially because it's just like, this is obviously a law situation or a legal situation,
right.
like from the first meeting.
And after this joke with Grandma, which goes nowhere and doesn't pan out at any point in the show, Jennifer admits that she's sort of disappointed in Mr. Flaherty, which sort of pans out a little bit later on that she says that she's disappointed in her teacher for not backing her up on this. Mm-hmm. And in come Mom and Dad, and with them comes Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Well, I don't remember her name. I just remember her nickname.
Raindrop.
Raindrop was the nickname, of course. I don't remember her real name.
So the backstory that they lay on us immediately, as soon as she walks in the door, she works for like Mason, Johnson, and Duckworth. Like, none of these are Jewish names for this.
Ohio. What do you expect?
And you would think that Gary David Goldberg would leap at the opportunity to make a joke about that, but he doesn't. And then they give this backstory of her being a lawyer, but she's only a little bit older than Alex, and that they hung out together on the ashram or wherever they lived, and like in San Francisco, and now she works as a law firm for speech or something. I don't know.
And she immediately comes in and sort of kind of is like a junkyard dog nipping at Alex's heels.
Why?
There was no reason except for the fact that it's so much more interesting than starting a relationship to have. If they'd given her a little bit more history, that there was a reason, it would have just worked a little bit better. But as it was, I was able to suspend disbelief immediately because I thought she delivered her lines so well.
Yes. And that's the thing, is like, because they give her so much backstory and so much biography when she walks in the door, and they talk about that she and Alex were at the same thing together, it would have been like Alex used to have a crush on her, or that she used to pinch Alex's cheeks or something. And so now they hate each other when they used to like each other.
What does she have? She has a line about something about Alex and saying, I got a sixth sense about things.
Oh, she's like, oh, it's so nice that, you know, your kids are people who stand up for rights and stuff and not just try to cash in at every second of the day.
Yes.
But then I'm like, wait a second. What's your deal, Julie Louis-Dreyfus? Like, you're a lawyer. And then Alex P. Keaton goes, oh, I'm sure you work for free for the law firm. And I was like, good job, Alex. Again, for some reason, I'm really agreeing with Alex in this episode.
And you sort of see they set up sort of a very, very contentious relationship between Alex P. Keaton and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Mm-hmm. And she's very short.
Right. Which is, a good thing. They always hire those short girls, the Tracy Pollins and the Courtney Coxes and who else have we had? What are the
Leah
girls?
Thompson.
Leah Thompson. Yeah, as mom. Complicated.
I know that Back to the Future when you re-examine it.
Yeah, I know. I had to think for a second there. And at this point, Jennifer realizes, wow, if we have a lawyer here, then really shit is just getting real. It's just starting. And she said, I was hoping that my part was over. And she realizes here at the break, oh no, my part is just beginning. Wah, wah, wah.
And with that, this episode is just beginning because when we come back, there is a special bonus content that Corey and I are going to discuss. So we'll see you in a few seconds. We'll be right back. And we're back. Corey?
Yes?
I'm live from New York talking to you right now, so let's discuss the SNL episode that Justine Bateman hosted.
Well, I just want to say I'm really glad that we're talking about the SNL episode because the rest of this episode, or certainly the first half of this second act, is their vignettes, and all I would be doing would be there's nothing to say about the first half of this second act. You know what I'm saying? We have testifying, we have people testifying as witnesses, and I would literally have nothing to say except, okay, Asian dude, Stephen, Mallory, Alex. I'll just list the people who spoke.
They just do fade outs from person to person as like time passes in this meeting.
And it's repetitive, and we sort of know where everybody's point of view is. But the SNL that Justine Bateman hosted featured a sketch that mocks family ties, and she sort of sets it up by saying that something about the clip shows. How they were doing a clip show, just like we do clip shows on Family Ties.
Yeah, she goes, some of my favorite episodes are the clip shows because we don't have to work very hard and we get paid just the same amount.
Which we've said, it's the laziest ass thing in the entire world. It's like, oh my God, of course you love a clip show. You're getting a new episode to pay and you did jack shit for it.
Yeah. And so that's like she's addressing the camera and the audience and talking about her favorite is this one called, what was the name of the episode?
The Old Walls Could Talk.
So it starts the scene and you have Kevin Nealon playing Michael Gross.
Right.
You have
Elise is Jan Hooks.
Yes.
And Alex
Victoria Jackson is Jennifer. And of course Justine Bateman is playing Mallory, and a very funny John Lovitz is playing Nick, which I never would have thought to cast him that way, but it really worked.
And you get the best impersonator, or one of the best impersonators they've ever had on the show, playing Alex P. Keaton, Dana Carvey, a really funny Dana Carvey because they're similar in type. Dana's Canadian as well.
Yeah, that's true. Oh no, he's not. He's from America.
Is he from America? I thought he was Canadian.
I think he's from San Francisco, maybe.
Oh yeah, you're right. But boy, he had the energy. He was sort of mocking Alex P. Keaton's energy and the jerkiness of his performance, and it was really funny.
Yeah, and so the premise of the sketch is that they're about to leave. They have to leave the old house. They're going to move because Steven's going to get a new job, and he's waiting to hear from the boss. And then they start saying, you know what? This reminds me of the time that Mallory was going to go out on her first date. And they flash back. And so throughout this episode, or throughout the sketch, they just keep doing flashbacks upon the flashback. So like in the middle of this flashback,
they start another flashback.
And it's amazing. And then they do a flashback into it's like Inception, to the point that they flash back to the time that they watched the Jeffersons. And so George, what are their names in the Jeffersons?
George and Wheezy.
George and Wheezy are tied up, and they talk about the maid, and they're like, "Remember the time that we hired her?" And then it flashes back, and then flashes back, and to them talking about the Jeffersons, and then it's like an onion in an improv show where it goes in one direction and then comes back chronologically through where we went to the original thing. I think that this sketch is one of the funniest written SNL sketches I've ever seen.
And I said to Paul when he told me that is that because you really thought it was funny, or because you pretty much hate SNL for the last 42 years?
You know what? I haven't watched SNL for longer than I did watch SNL at this point.
Wow.
Like, I think I stopped in like 98 or 99.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But
I just want to point out. But you caught every episode of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, there was only like 18 episodes of that.
I just want to point that out.
It didn't have Jimmy Fallon in it, so I was great.
Wow. Well, and I was so angry at you when you started your Jimmy Fallon rants. I really was, and now I'm sort of on your side. You know,
I see. Look at that. Just like everyone on the left, you'll kick us. You'll kick us for 30 years, and then you'll find out we were right the whole time.
This one took me a while, and yet no, you're right. He came around. Okay. So, skipping over this whole first scene. I
want to say something about the SNL thing. So, the SNL episode happens on February 13th. And then this episode premiered on February 14th. And I was like, wait a second, why was Family Ties on a Sunday night? Was there some special? And so I looked back to part 1 of this episode, and it was a week before on a Sunday. So I go on Wikipedia, and I'm like, what night was Family Ties on? And in season 6, they flipped it from Thursday night behind the Cosby Show to Sunday nights. And that was like the death knell of Family Ties.
But it was Sunday at 8, wasn't it? It led off the night, didn't it?
Indeed.
I would assume it hit status. It would either be at 8 or 9, and it was way more of a family show, an 8 o'clock show than a 9 o'clock show.
Yes, and in season 5, it was the number 2. Like, it averaged the number 2 show in the country.
And what happened when they moved it to Sunday?
17.
Wow, it fell precipitously.
Yes, which is, to me, so this is something I wanted to discuss. It's so interesting that audiences didn't follow it, really. Like, they didn't say, I loved Family Ties so much all these years, I'm going to go watch it on Sunday night. That's weird.
Which, of course, was NBC's hope when they move it to Sunday night. Now, I'm going to assume, if I remember correctly, wasn't it Gary David Goldberg's other show? Wasn't it his new show that premiered at 8:30 on Sunday nights right afterwards?
On Sunday?
On Sunday. Didn't they give it?
That may well be. That could, like,
Courtney Thorne-Smith?
Day by Day.
Day by Day. If I remember correctly, it followed it, and they gave Gary David Goldberg, and I think that was his consolation prize for moving it. We're going to move you to Sundays. Don't panic. We're going to pick up your other show.
That could very well be, and that would make. I need to look at that because I didn't think to look at that sort of information. But the Thursday night brouhaha is pretty interesting, Corey. See if you remember this. I think that what happened was Cosby Bigfooted and created a different world. This was the first, so that September is when A Different World in 1987 premiered.
Had to do something with Family Ties. They couldn't leave it at 8:30, and Cheers was still firmly ensconced at 9.
Yeah, so Cosby wanted to put A Different World on. They put it on right after The Cosby Show, so it got a great lead in. And then that show, I think that a lot of it happened because Cosby, and this is all like rumors and stories over like 30 years, that like Lisa Bonet had done a movie where she appeared naked.
Right.
Cosby didn't want her around anymore.
Right. So he spun her off.
And so he spun her off to get rid of her. Then, a couple years into the show, where she was the star, and it became a community show, like all the different classmates and roommates and stuff like that. It's an amazing show. It's a really good show, A Different World. She and her husband, she got pregnant. She and her husband, Lenny Kravitz, had a baby in like 1988. And when she was pregnant, Cosby kicked her off that show. And so, because he was like, you know, Lisa Bonet can be pregnant, but whatever, Clarice or whatever her name is, Denise, can't be pregnant. And so like Bill Cosby with A Different World with the 8:30 time slot, you just look at just this information and it's like, holy shit, the power that he had over people's careers. Like he changed the dynamic for Family Ties. He put this actress that he didn't like anymore on the Cosby Show into a different show and then kicked her off that. Like, holy shit. Anyway.
If we go back to the episode and we go through that long ass office scene where everybody speaks and Steven has his recurring joke, his 3-time joke in the scene where everybody uses his material. He's the one who wants to speak late.
Yeah.
Everybody says what his points are. And then of course we end with Jennifer speaking, or it seems as though we're going to end with Jennifer making the final speech, and of course she gets thunderous applause at her final speech, and the real final speech comes from Teacher Flaherty, the David Hyde Pierce lookalike contest winner, who steps forward and finally grows a pair of nails right in front of us.
It was interesting because Jennifer says some very interesting points about like the reason that she wanted to read it, that she believes in free speech for this or that or blah, blah, blah. All the same nonsense they've reiterated in both parts of this episode. But then the teacher, when he gets up, Corey, he's like, I have to say something. I've been a coward this whole time and I'm so angry that I was pushed into this position. But then he says nothing. He has nothing of interest to say. Jennifer already said the good points. And he just gets really emotional about it, and nothing is said, and everyone applauds him. And I'm just like, this show is such garbage. Like, they want to talk about politics, and then they have nothing interesting to say, and they have no knowledge of what they're talking about. And it's really sad for this show that, like, if you want to talk about politics, know about it, and then say something interesting in an interesting way. Mm-hmm. And over 6 scenes, they never did.
No. After the scene, after Flaherty declares, I am a teacher, hear me roar.
Yeah.
We cut to the kitchen. Andy is reading to the Little Train That Could, Little Engine That Could, to Nick. And then Nick reads, and Andy comments that Nick's reading much better.
And it was funny.
Yeah, it was funny. Andy exits doing what he does best, making that roundabout exit from the kitchen. And, of course, everybody comes in raving about Jennifer and her performance in front of the school board. Wow. And then Elise says something that I realize now was one of the points of the episode, and they didn't make it until the very end, where she said, wow, Jennifer, this was a great start for a career as an activist.
Oh, and right.
Didn't realize that that Stephen and Elise's pride, or certainly Elise's pride, had to do with activism.
I mean, that was sort of unstated but implied in part 1, but it would have been nice if they had brought it up.
Yeah, and then she said it, and it was like, well, gee, you could have said it more succinctly like this earlier. And they were very proud of Jennifer for this. And of course, Julia Louis-Dreyfus comes barging in, as everybody does in the last scene of every episode of Family Ties when they're in the kitchen, barging in without knocking, no knock at all. I'm going to walk in your kitchen door. I've met you once.
Yeah.
And then she comes barging in, and then Alex P. Keaton comes barging in, and I beat you. No, I beat you. No, I beat you. No, I'm better than you. No, I'm a better lawyer than you. No, I know more than you. And she says, why do I scare you, Alex? And then they actually have a chase around the island in the kitchen.
I was flummoxed. I
don't know how else to go. I had to aim for that. Then they actually have a chase around the island in the kitchen. I'm so sorry I had to report that to everybody, but that's the God's honest truth.
Yeah, that's how this episode concludes, is with it
disintegrates two good comedic actors who can talk, and it disintegrates into a Benny Hill sketch.
If only.
Yeah, except those were funny. They're running around the island physically chasing each other.
Oh, speaking of funny, in the scene where they're doing all of the montage of people, proselytizing about their different points of view, there's this one woman in the back wearing an unfortunate like pantsuit, and she's like, "You know what? I'm so upset. Why do you get to tell my kids what they're allowed to read? And who voted you in?" And they're like, "Well, you guys did." And she's like, "Yeah, that's what you say, but you know what? I voted for Nixon." Like, and everybody laughs knowingly, and then Alex stands up and goes, "Ha, is that a funny thing? Are we laughing at that now? Is that?"
He takes umbrage at the Nixon joke.
It was amazing. I thought that might have been the funniest joke they've done all season.
So Alex and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, they're chasing each other around, and in the middle of this nonsense, we have the third person to barge in the kitchen door, which is Mr. Flaherty decides he's going to come over and just barge right on in.
Right.
And he has sort of a nice little heartfelt moment with Jennifer, telling Jennifer how proud he is of her, and and she makes him a better teacher, and I love you, and I know this is awkward, but it shouldn't be because clearly I'm gay. So all of that was implied in the scene. I don't know if you caught it all.
I caught it. I caught it too. Yeah.
Okay, you caught it. I just want to make sure because I love you, but not in a sexual kind of way because he's definitely David Hyde Pierce.
Right, of course.
And then Jennifer starts to read aloud from Huck Finn in a moment that just completely confused me. And then they end a double episode about Jennifer with Nick reading a passage from The Little Engine That Could.
Good God, what a mess.
It got messier and messier as the show went on.
Yeah, and I don't know if you listeners, because we also sort of meandered with regard to discussing different topics and stuff like that. But in watching this second part, nothing leads into anything else. There's no organic flow to any of this episode.
No, it's very, very jarring, the episode, scene by scene by scene, leading to the montage, which is a bumpy ride in and of itself because its format is completely different from anything we've ever seen on the show before. It's just weird. It was just a weird episode.
Very, very weird episode. And it was funny because part one was pretty well done. We had complaints about it and stuff like that, but it made sense.
Yeah.
So, this is what it is. It's, they always mess up the landing on two-part episodes.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to say about this, that I thought in this episode that they did, and it's ironic because of the SNL connection, Jennifer is almost an interesting character at this point in Family Ties history. She's just like a normal person. Like, she has interests, and she has like a point of view about stuff, and I don't know, for the longest time, she's always been such a non-entity that this is why I bring up SNL. They make her into a punchline throughout the whole sketch where they're like, blah, blah, blah. Isn't that right, Jennifer? And she just goes, yeah.
Yes. All she says the whole sketch is the word yes. And at one time she appears with a baseball cap on, which cracked my ass up.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they're always trying to turn her into a tomboy.
Right, right.
So there's a baseball cap on her, but she only says the word yes to everything.
Yeah, yeah. And the SNL sketch, I highly recommend. This episode, I do not.
The SNL sketch is on Vimeo if anybody's interested, so check it out there.
Yeah, I'll post it.
Okay, good.
So, on that note, anything else, Corey, before we head out of town?
No, I think not. We didn't mention, what's his name?
Scott Valentine?
No, Scott's right, but not Valentine.
Oh, Scott Jones.
That's it?
Yeah, he used to be one of the hosts on this show.
I remember. He was nice. I liked him.
He was a fine gentleman of a person.
Nice guy. I liked him, yeah.
What's funny is that much like we didn't realize until midway through, or 3/4 of the way through season 6, that this was on Sunday nights and that the show had fallen off the cliff.
Yes.
Also, by this point in season 6, we just realized that Scott isn't a host of this show anymore.
Scott's fallen off the cliff, too.
It took this long for us to realize denial is not just a river in Egypt.
we pretended long enough. But but he'll drop by. I'm sure he'll drop by soon. And when he does, he'll tell us about Henry and what he's doing in junior high school, and about Maisie and the first bra that they fit her with.
Yeah, we'll do clip shows of them growing up.
Yeah. Of Scott's children. So we're gonna have to really jump a little time here and catch everybody up.
Oh man. All right. So rate and review our show on iTunes. For questions and comments, email us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at QTWFT for updates, and you can follow each of us. I'm at Paul Packler.
I'm at Corpep, and yes, Ethan Scott can be found at Follow Jones.
And you can like us on Facebook. We'd like to thank our host and producer, Barbara Dillon, at Fanbase Press. Fanbase Press is a comic book publisher and an online community supporting creators and fans through daily reviews, interviews, and podcasts that span the pop culture spectrum. Check them out at fanbasepress.com. We'd like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs Family Ties and our theme song, Without Us. Check out her website at perryadams.com. We'd like to thank Bryant Dillon, who created our fantastic drawing and artwork, as well as edits our show. Bryant is the president and co-founder of Fanbase Press. Follow him on Twitter at Comic Book Slayer. And finally, we'd like to thank Sean Foster, Fanbase Press's graphic designer, for designing our logo. Gang, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. La 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 la.